Hi. Welcome, and welcome to everybody who's watching us from all over the world. That's amazing, huh? Okay, I always start, as you know, with a prayer. And welcome to Spike. You're the first dog to attend a workshop.
Very honored.
Okay. Lord, today my prayer is, I breathe with all living creatures. I dwell in the mystical truth that I share the breath of creation with all sentient beings. I'm beginning to comprehend the rules of co-creation. Little by little I observe that each choice I make sets divine light into motion, or darkness. I'm not alone in this universe, even though sometimes I feel that I am. My thoughts and emotions belong to everyone, and somehow, in some way, the energy of all beings pass through me like wind through a cheesecloth. We all share this earth and participate in creation in every moment and in every event. Nothing could be more preposterous than to believe any of us is separate, safe, immune from all acts of creation or destruction. What is in one is in the whole. I wonder, Lord, why we are repelled by that sacred truth. Why do we not want to be one with all things? If I could see clearly, Lord, I would see that my energy is everywhere. I have left millions of tiny particles of my energy like cosmic crumbs in every country, city, town, and home that I have visited, not to mention every street I have ever walked upon. The same is true for everyone else. We are all blending together, a great cosmic weave of power. No wonder the great mystics finally surrendered to you, Lord. They wanted you to take charge of this immense power of creation that is set into motion with every breath we take. Today, Lord, I breathe with all creation, and I will dwell in the truth that I am one with all life, and all life with me. Amen. Okay, well, I want to start this evening by telling you that this is a big deal for me to teach this workshop. I am launching with you my new book, The Holy Language. So this is a big deal for me. And I'm still in the midst of writing this book, but it has been years in the creating of this. It has cooked in me for a very, very long time. So this evening, I want to kind of give you the texture from whence it has come. Because it is, for me, the launch of a bio-spiritual, ecological theology. It is, for me, the presentation of what I believe is the emerging theology, a new way that God is presenting itself to us, through us, around us. And in a sense, as I discuss this with all humility, I think that, dare I say, a lot of the events in the world can be discussed through why and how the myths of the familiar world, the myths of God, the myths of religion, that are getting dismantled. And all the consequences, the threads and dominoes that are falling because those myths have come to an end, and the trajectory of what is trying to emerge within us and around us can be tracked to this new breath of God that is trying to emerge and will eventually emerge. So let me say that I think it's an incredible privilege to be alive now, that we are living what I think is the most momentous turning point in the history of civilization. In the history of civilization. And that it is for me, every day is a day of looking at where are we now on this incredible turning point that I am alive. And even this morning, when I was talking with, I was at a breakfast table with very close friends, Beth, one of them, and she reminded me that I had said, and I do, you know how you play that game, like if you could live at any other time, when would that be? And the popular zones are when Jesus was alive or ancient Egypt. I can give you all the popular zones. But for me, I would go into the future. I would want to see how people wrote about this time now. Because it is the truth that people don't realize what they are living. That when people lived in the Renaissance, did they know it was the Renaissance? Did they know when they were living at a time that gathered together Michelangelo, Christopher Wren, Da Vinci, Shakespeare, all at the same time? All at the same time. Thomas Tallis, all the greats that were gathered at the same time. Did they know? I think we're living a Renaissance. I mean, look at this. The Black Plague is over, and we are living in light again. Did they have any idea? But it wasn't until a century or two passed that they looked back and realized, as they looked at the library of knowledge that was born during those centuries, and how different it was from the types of knowledge, the way they were thinking, the evolutionary leaps of thought that had come to pass in that time. This is that type of time. It is so momentous what is happening now. What is happening within you and around every single species of our planet. What is happening within every molecule, within every single breath. Nothing will be the same on our planet. Even year by year, the speed of change and what we are observing. So I know many of you, I see some long and lovely familiar faces here. And some of you have, I believe, not been with me before. Who's not been with me before? Okay, so I'm going to introduce you to believe me, you're going to be relieved to find out I have very few drawings that I use because I am so not an artist. But the few that I have, the very few that I have, will come in useful. Okay, we're going to use blue because I need you to stretch the tapestry of your imagination. And I always present this image of a building, which will come in handy. And it will come in handy in your own life. And curiously for me, and I find it real curious when I think about how my own life's journey has led me to what I teach today. And that's that I never thought that I would do the book that I'm teaching or the work that I am going to teach today, or that I would ever write anything on prayer, or that I would become a spokesman for what's happening in the invisible world, as if I cared less about what's happening in anybody's spirituality, and now that's all I care about. And I think it's really a rotten trick that's how my life turned out. But anyway, it did. And really, you know what I mean? Like, I could have done other things, but look what I'm stuck with. Anyway. But the way it unfolded for me was not through the theological track that started my studies so many years ago. It was as a medical intuitive. Because as I did more and more readings, and as the years went by, one question led to another. And I became really intrigued with how we worked. What put us together? You know, as someone who was obsessed with studies, as I was, and then I went into theology, and I went into theology because I was driven to learn how to think. Because after I'd finished college, and I knew that I could write, but I didn't know how to think, and I was aware that I couldn't think well. Meaning by that the parameters of my thinking were held intact by my tribe. And I had to get out of that. I realized I was traditional, conventional, and I needed help to not think the way my family did, or the way I needed to break free so that I could discern the difference between the influence of my tribe and what was truth. And I knew I had two choices. I could study philosophy or I could study theology. That those were the two tracks for me that would break me out of thinking. And I could tell if I got defensive, I was defending a lie. Anytime I got defensive, I knew that I was protecting an illusion. Anytime I got defensive in my thinking, I knew that I was protecting something that I wanted to be true because I knew it wasn't. And so I needed some way to be able to break out of being held prisoner by thoughts that I knew were not true. And it made me crazy. I felt like I was imprisoned. So what was, if this wasn't the truth, what was? And I figured I needed an escort to that level of consciousness because I couldn't get there by myself. And that's why I studied theology. And specifically mystical. Because the mystics, and I'm going into this because we're going into this. And this is holy language. And I went into the mystical path because I was intrigued, fascinated with how come certain people had these profound experiences and other people didn't. What was it they experienced? What was it? How come certain people could... And I remember when I was in college, and my college is a convent, and some of those nuns dwelled in holiness, and it wasn't fraudulent. They were holy. And I remember that one morning looking at that nun, and she was looking at this tree, and she was alive with grace. And I said, "Good morning, sister." And she looked at me and she said, "Good morning." And she was radiating. And I said, "How are you?" She said, "Oh, God's in his heavens and all's right with the world." And I thought, and then I realized I envied it. I realized, where do you live? Where do you dwell? What is that? What is that all's right with the world? What is that? What do you know that I don't? Where are you? Right? What do you believe? What? Right? Get over here. Right? Okay. When I got into mystical theology, it was obvious to me that those people were not crazy. That in fact, people who think they're crazy are crazy. But more than that, they're afraid. They're afraid. They're afraid of something that is absolutely extraordinary. And that defined the rest of my life. It just did. It just turned my life upside down. Okay, so when I got into medical intuition, which the point I want to make about that is I really loved the study of mysticism. I still do. I adore it. So I don't know if I can explain this shock when I started to do medical intuitive readings, which happened by accident. by accident. I never heard of medical intuition. I never heard of chakras. Nothing. So when readings started, which happened by accident, someone said, Lisa's not well. I was editing a manuscript. I said, she has leukemia. I went back into the manuscript, okay? When that happened, and then I began to do readings, and then sensing the energy system, and these inner senses opened up, I thought, where did this design come from? How come with all the studies I did, nobody told me about the consciousness of the soul? Nobody told me the soul had 7 chakras. Nobody said that we were as organized energetically as we were physically in our anatomical system. Nobody told me that. Nobody told me. Where did this bank account of knowledge come from? How is it that I was never told any of this when I studied so hard to know the truth? Okay, shakaroo. So, yeah, shakaroo. So I nosedived into this, not because I wanted to be a medical intuitive. I had no interest in it, but I wanted to know the truth. What is this design? This was like La La Land. Who put us together? How is it that a thought could affect, and how much, and what is this power, and what's going on here, and what does this mean for the nature of God? How does this restructure theology for me, and are there still saints? And I can't, everything was on the table. Everything. I was like a stranger in a strange land again, but it was a marvelous strange land. Because I thought, is this what we're like? And what this was doing for me was leveling a theological playing field. Because what our bio-spiritual design did was take all the myths of religion, Catholicism, Islam, Judaism, all of which I'd saturated myself in, and said, throw them out. I am now dealing with something universal. Because when I do a reading on you, one of the things that does not come up is what religion you are. What comes up are the superstitions you have. But your bio-spiritual soul is no different than anybody else's. So I was beginning to take a look at the fact that the universe is not a prejudiced system. We are, but God isn't. And I thought, I prefer this. I prefer the level of truth that is now operating at a level I had not witnessed before, which is the laws of life. The laws of life have absolutely no prejudice to them, absolutely no discrimination. The laws of life and science and nature. And then one day I realized that's the nature of God. That's it right there. That's the nature of God. So how I have come to the place that I've come to has actually been through this long trajectory that's taken a 35-year journey of trying to figure out us and our relationship to the power we have in our soul and creation and et cetera, et cetera. And from that, I believe what's happening in this moment is that we are sharing this profound journey of shedding the anthropomorphic designs of God and emerging into a universal understanding of the nature of God as law and order, as a system of consistency, as the laws of our bio-spiritual creation ecology, which matches the laws of nature, of which we are a part, and the laws of creation. That this is the universal structure, and it is that bio-spiritual ecology that will balance ultimately the ecology of our planet, and also it is that position that allows us to approach and accept the idea that we are not alone in this universe. That all the laws of God then make sense as we get off this universe, and that what's happening now is our idea of God being earth-centric, looking like us, following the democratic laws, marrying like us, fathering a child like us, that these mythologies have served us, but serve us no more. And so the deeper mystical nature of God, of the nature of God, is what's getting revealed. And it's getting revealed through our holistic health, through our energy nature, through our energetic anatomy, through our whole understanding that we create our reality, and that it is, and where we are right now is that we are in a particularly vulnerable zone because we are between mythologies. We don't have the myths we fit into, but we don't have any myths to go to. Okay? So I'll say a lot more about that in a minute, but we've tossed out the very vocabulary we need to make this journey. Ergo, holy language. And without holy language, and I'll go into that in great detail in the days to come, we have lost our way inside of ourselves, because that is the navigating tool of the mystics. And without that, I think there's been a dramatic increase in madness, depression, anxiety, the inability to heal, that a lot of the inner torment that people go through and suffering is the result that the very vocabulary of the soul was tossed out with religion. And that and holy language is as powerful as the mystics said it was. And that's what this workshop's about. Got it? So, here's my first drawing. You lucky people. Be glad it's not an art class. Okay. You know, one thing I tell you, little by little, these insights kind of poured in, and somewhere, I don't know, who knows, who cares, years ago, I was sitting with someone, and I'm someone, the way things work with me is that I will accumulate perceptions, and then I get a boom, and all the perceptions make sense, and they come together with one of those downloads that organize all the perceptions into one clear O. Bingo. And years ago, I did a book, Why People Don't Heal. And that actually was a portal into a whole universe for me. Because in addressing that question, that was just the beginning of my looking deeply into our issue of forgiveness and healing and power and how we manage a whole level of consciousness, which is our inability to want to be empowered, even though we keep saying we do. And all that we struggle with on this journey of saying we want to be empowered, we want to be conscious, but the constant back and forth of that saboteur, which is also part of holy language. And one day I realized, as this person was talking about, I tried this to heal, I tried that, I tried this, I tried that, da, 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 and I realized you don't have the vocabulary to heal. You simply don't have the vocabulary. You'll never get out because your vocabulary is inadequate. You can't get out. And it was a matter of vocabulary. That the words this person had were simply so they lacked the kind of power they lacked inspiration. They lacked the kind of soothing grace. None of the vocabulary this person had was capable of generating grace. Astonishing. So we have to talk about that. Like, how do you talk to yourself? And what words? And by choice, this person couldn't go near words that generated grace. Amazing. Okay. Makes you think, what words am I using, right? Okay, so I know a lot of you are familiar, but for those who are not, I talk to people now to use this image, that you are a building. And once you're born, a lot of your structure's already in place. A lot of your structure's already determined once you're born. So once the building's built, all your movement then is inside the building. All your movement is about going up the floors. You can't move the structure once it's built. You can't move the Empire State Building. You can't move the Houses of Parliament. So once the building's built, you can move inside. So when you think about your life, once you're born, you can't undo what your influence. I can't undo the fact that I was born American. That's a given factor. I can't undo a whole lot. And so your first floor is essentially the factor that if you go into a first floor of a building and you look out the window, what you're going to see is the basics of your life and the most limited view from that building. You're going to see the ground, the street. You're going to get the foulest smells from the trash. And if you stay on the first floor of your building and you try to resolve your problems, you're not going to get very far. But it's still a reality for you. And when you live on the first floor of your building, you will think that you're the only one on the block. Okay? And you will get the idea that it's your block, and you call the shots on your block. and that's just the way it is. And no foreigner should be on your block. And that the size of your world is the size of that block. And as long as you maintain control, as long as things are peaceful on your block, why, you don't have to deal with any of the other problems in the world, because there is no other problems. You're on that block and that's it. And you start believing illusions that what goes on in the rest of the world doesn't apply to you, because your world is that block. And so there are certain illusions that actually become truth for you. They function like truth. They smell like truth. They taste like truth. Because so far as you're concerned, that is the truth. While you're in that first floor of that building. How many of you are in your first floor? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. Here's the thing. Whether or not you admit it to me doesn't make a damn bit of difference. Because I'm not the one that's paying the price for it. I just got to tell you. But if you want your own life to change, or if you're dealing with an illness, or if there's anything going on in your life, don't play games with yourself. I will tell you that healing is ruthless honesty. Ruthless. I'm telling you, to the bone. So it's between you and yourself. But at the end of the day, you cannot lie to yourself and get away with it. What Teresa of Avila would say is, every lie is a reptile. And if you won't face it during the day, it'll come visit you at night. And reptiles see better at night than you. So be mindful of that. Okay. Now, here's the thing as we go through this workshop. We're going to go up and we'll talk about views from the upper levels. But it is in your soul and it is in your nature to want to explore your building. It's just in your nature. Which is why you're compelled to ask questions like, I wonder what the purpose of my life is. And I know you have all perhaps thought or asked that question, have you not? Who has never wondered that? Who has absolutely never wondered that at all? Okay, so it is fair to say that you have all in some way thought, I wonder what the purpose of my life is. Fair enough? Okay. Well, I will tell you this, in prior to the generations of whom we are a part, that question was considered a prayer, not a question. It was a prayer. And you would have been in a monastery, and you would have asked permission to ask that question. Because if I would be your abbess, I would say, are you ready to ask that prayer, to say that prayer? Because as your abbess, I would know you're opening up a profound, deep journey now. And I would know that it would be inevitable that the dark night of the soul was going to come. It would be inevitable because that is holy language. What you're saying is, take away everything that's an illusion so my soul's purpose could come. Take away. But the way people ask it today, it's like, can I have a more glamorous job? Because they don't get what this is. Because they don't understand holy language or the power of it at all. But your soul's compelled to make this journey to seek deeper and deeper and deeper. And with every floor you go up, if you, just for fun, go up a tall building and look out the window of every floor at the very same thing, and you see how the views change, and imagine that you're looking at your own life, and that with every level, you see a different vantage point of your own life. Of your own life. And nothing has changed on the outside. You've changed. You've changed your position. But when you change your position, everything on the outside changes. And that's the great truth that you learn. If I get higher, everything changes on my outside. I'm the one that has to get higher. But what you're also going to learn as this weekend goes by is that like buying in a condo building, every floor up is more expensive. It's more expensive. It's going to cost you more money. And that nobody down here is interested in your views up here. That as you go up higher in your viewpoint, as you see the world bigger, and you get a wider lens on how you understand everything, people that don't have that wider lens are not interested in your wider lens. They don't live there. You're not interested in their wider lens. By the way, remind yourself that, and I'm not interested in your wider lens, by the way. I want my lens just this big until you don't. Until there's something about your lens that no longer serves you. So you have to remind yourself, I'm no different than anybody else, but as soon as this lens doesn't work, I need to get a higher lens. It takes, and every single lens, what happens is as you get higher, the way you've understood your world to that point, all the players change. Everything changes. Everything. And it's as different as saying, on this floor, I believed the world was flat, only up here I saw that it was round. And now I have to throw out all my flat world maps. And everybody down here still believes the world's flat, and I can't convince them it's round. And they still believe they fall off the edge of the earth and blah, 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 blah. And I just can't make any sense with them anymore, so I can't talk to them anymore. It drives me crazy. So you start realizing that you used to believe the world was flat too. And that if you break through that perception, it's going to be very difficult to hang out with flat worlders. It's going to be very difficult to hang out with flatlanders. And one of the common writings of mystics is that they would say, like Francis of Assisi or Teresa or any of the mystics, they would say, this is a very painful journey. This is very painful. Lord, help me, this is very, very painful. And when I was a baby Catholic, and looking at that, it's very, your inclination is to think, that somehow heaven was torturing them, and that's how they got to be saints. They were going to get fried or tortured, and like, who wants to go anywhere near that? And that's an association we still have, that going anywhere near the spiritual anything ends up with a broke bank account and torture and boils and just the most awful stuff. And so why would anybody, But what they actually meant was this, and that's that the more I understand, the harder it is. The more I know, the more I get how really beautiful and conscious this universe is, the harder it is for me to live among the unconscious. That's what they meant. The more I realize that the trees actually understand me, and that they breathe together, and that they actually do feel a saw going through them, the more it is unbearable for me to hear them getting chopped down. It is unbearable. I don't know where to go when I hear the saws going through the trees. That's what Francis meant. He says, I can't bear it, and I can't bear the sound of it. I know that they are hurting. And I can't bear it. This is what he meant. So when we talk about this business of becoming conscious, it is a journey of how conscious of how much it really is about how much do I actually really want to know? How much do I want to know? Okay, now, but this is what's happening. So I want to present, and for the rest of the evening before we shut down, just a broader picture. We can think that we have choice, that now, I don't want to do this, but we don't. There are certain decisions that have been made. And you have to look at the nature of nature and the nature of evolution. And that's, I have referred so many times to the significance of entering the nuclear age. And I think that if I lectured on it to the day that I leave this planet, I will never be able to communicate how incredibly significant that event is in our lives. When we entered the nuclear age, and to think how we don't think about it blows me away. Blows me away. But when we entered the nuclear age, I think that in the second that we cracked into energy consciousness, energy became real. It became conscious. It became the new power zone. Whereas the second before, it wasn't power for anybody. The moment nuclear power, the atomic age, became real was the second that we slipped into the next reality. The next reality. And from that moment on, everything that we had been taught for millennia was wrong. But nobody announced that. Okay? From the second we slipped in the invisible world, imagine that a signal went out that said we have to jumpstart human evolution. We have to put it on a quantum leap now, because humanity has just entered the energy era, and human beings have got to develop their energetic senses so they can manage the energetic power they've just unlocked. That's exactly what happened. And so, if you look back from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, if you look at our history, from that point on, we became obsessed, possessed, and driven by the world behind our eye instead of the world in front of our eye. Inner space became the place we wanted to examine. We started to change our vocabulary and became obsessed with our inner sensitivities, our inner senses, our intuition, psychic development, all of our energetic nature, our therapeutic progressions. We became absolutely obsessed with self-discovery, self-empowerment. We started to talk about power, self-empowerment. We took the word self that prior to this era went with ish, selfish. You're selfish to look at yourself. And then we stuck it as a preface, self-empowerment, self. So a hybrid was created that we call the inner self. More than the ego, but less than the soul. So it's a type of inner vessel that we created to discover our inner being, our inner nature. Nobody ever talked about the inner self, ever, prior to this age. But we have an inner self, and your inner self is your new best friend. You consult with your inner self all the time, but I assure you your parents didn't. I assure you they did not. But your inner self tells you, I need my own space. I need space. Your inner self is the deal breaker in all your relationships. Your inner self will break up your marriage, break up your relationships, or determine whether or not you have one. Your inner self, this hybrid, has more authority over you. It is your intimate other. More than you possibly can imagine. It is an archetypal companion that is this hybrid that we have created in this time to navigate the world behind our eye and to give birth, to create the hologram that we now live in. So we all have this inner self. So we talk about, I wonder what my purpose in life is. It is the inner self you are asking. You're asking, what am I going to do with this power in me that doesn't quite fit the ordinary world? Where do I want to put and here's your operative word, power. You're interested in your power now. Power is your new word. Nobody talked that way before. So we are rapidly changing the vocabulary on how we measure ourselves, how we see ourselves. We now say things like, I have to take my power back. Nobody ever spoke that way before. So now we speak in terms of our invisible selves, as though that's normal. We've just evolved that way, and nobody ever says, do you see that we're evolving now and talking about invisible parts of ourselves and fragments and our psychic free radicals? And nobody has ever said, do you realize how much we've changed? Do you realize? Nobody's ever said, by the way, where are all your invisible parts? Did you bring them all here? Have you any idea how many places you are other than here? You have no idea how many dimensions you're in other than here. You haven't a clue. But to even have that conversation strikes you as being totally normal. So you've become multidimensional, and you have never even looked in the mirror and said, do you realize you're multidimensional now? Well, let's just go to sleep. You have not even a clue. You have not even a clue. It seems normal to you. It seems like the new normal. But you don't even get the size of this evolutionary leap and what it means. And what it means. Or do we have the vocabulary that's adequate to navigate the energetic world that actually is the realm of the mystics? Because in shifting gears, when you ask a question like, for what reason have I been born? In the monastery, I would say, okay, you are asking to plunge deeply. Take me down deep, Lord, and show me the reason you gave me life. That is the prayer. Take me down deep. Take me down deep. And my response to you would be, I've got to find you a spiritual director. You cannot go unescorted into your soul. You cannot do this journey unescorted, because this is a journey of truth. It is not a journey of occupation. Your ordinary ego wants attention. And we're going to just beat the hell out of that part of you. Or God will. But the real journey of finding for what reason you were given life is a journey of stripping away everything that is, in the language of Buddha, a distraction. And that's like getting your teeth pulled. That's like, because we cling to our distractions. We're hoarders when it comes to distractions. We're hoarders. You can't even throw out your old clothes, much less your distractions. So they get yanked from us. And that is what happens when we say, what am I doing here? Well, you weren't doing such a good job of it. You thought you were here to collect things and to get attention and to think, and because you thought you were special, well, we're just going to fix that right up. We're going to fix that really good. And we're going to find out that everything you thought was not the truth. But now we're going to organize that. So the first stage is the stage of finding out everything that drove you to ask and gave you so much pain. We're going to pull away from you. Only you're not in a monastery, whereas it used to happen with support monastically. You're out on your own, without holy language, without realizing what a mystical experience is, without the support system, and without being able to understand, am I in a spiritual crisis or am I going insane? Oh my. So it's a good thing you're here. So I'm going to let you ask some questions in our last few minutes together. What do you got for me? Yes. Oh, wait. Beth will get. Good to see you. And that's the same chair you had last year, I think?
I think so.
Yes.
So my question...
Just talk.
My question was, this journey going up the levels, my impression is that it's most often a painful journey, something negative has to happen to push you up.
It's why is painful negative?
Well, okay, I see now that the pain isn't negative, but when you're on the first floor, you're not going to move to the second floor out of choice. Like, you're not, I mean, that's my experience, that essentially like the roof caves in or something has to happen for you to wake up.
Mm-hmm.
Like the wake-up call is often unpleasant at the time, but when you've kind of completed the cycle and you look back and then it kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering, like, is that kind of how your experience as well? I mean, people don't just kind of, generally don't change unless something makes them change.
As a rule, think about, well, just look at your own life. Do you change?
No, you don't, because you're comfortable, so you just stay.
No, don't say you, because you're not talking about me. No, I.
Yeah.
Say I.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, it's, here are the two words. We change by wisdom or woe. Those are our two options. We either change by wisdom or woe.
And why does it take some people just a little
Why does
bit
it take me?
Why does it take me? No, that was not the question.
Okay.
The question is, because I'm observing now, and
Okay.
I notice that
All
some
right.
people change
Mm-hmm.
when, like, something goes wrong or something changes, and then other people, like, get lots of wake-up calls, but they still don't change.
Right.
So, is that just...
You know, here's something we're going to go into a little bit more deeply with this building. It's the significance of the building, and I obviously did not communicate that clearly tonight, is not that is that eventually the lower levels is the way we structure our consciousness, is that in the lower level we see everything as right or wrong, good or bad, left or right, because painful or not painful, or not, because what we are what we do all the time, is that we have to organize power. We have to organize creation and power. We're always doing that. We're always trying to figure out how to organize what is getting created and what we are experiencing. And we're always trying to control the speed of an experience and how it's going to come to an outcome. If I don't say this correctly, catch me. And our mechanism is to judge it and outrun the outcome, get to the finish line before the experience. So that in the midst of an experience, we will say, this is a bad experience, or this is a good experience, and what we use, because down here, we use our 5 senses as the measure to give us the feedback as to whether this is a good experience or not a good experience. Bad experience, it's hurting my physical hand. Bad experience, because it's hurting my physical hand. And yet, what if I put my hand on something and it's burning, it's a good experience because it's telling me don't put your body on there. Okay, but what we do is we try to organize the speed of power, the impact. We are always trying to control the unknown from happening to us by deciding how to manage the speed of the polarities of the yin and the yang, by saying this is good, that is bad. We're always trying to do this, so we decide that's good, this is bad. You have to tell me if this is wrong or if this is right. Whereas as you go up, like in the perception of Buddha says, give that up and just say it's just experience. How are you responding to the experience? Give up this judgment. Even in the Old Testament, Yahweh says, stop judging. You don't know what you're looking at. Because judgment, here you are. What a judgment does is it takes your perception and it anchors you into what the Taoist would say a spectacle. I've decided that spectacle is good, bad, positive, or negative, and I've made the decision based on how I believe that event will affect me, not you, even though it's happening to all of us. But I've decided the event's only about me, and only in the way it affects me, and therefore I've decided it's a bad event because it's going to, I don't like the way it feels. You may love the way it feels. But because I don't like the way it feels, I've decided it's bad. So in this first world, we use the scale of bad, good, right, wrong, depending on how something serves us, in order to control it, in order to parameter it, in order to put it in a box to control its impact, because we're so afraid of letting something just flow through us. And I don't know if it was good or bad, it just let it, and it's also because if we say this is bad or good, it tells us how to respond to it. If I'm constantly judging people, well, I think you're a good person, I think you're maybe a good person, you I'm not sure about, As I judge people, then I automatically know how to respond. I don't have to think about it. If I think you're a good person, maybe you are. You, I don't know. You, I don't know. But in judging, it automatically determines how I respond to you, and I'm not held accountable. I can let my accountability off the hook because I can blame my judgments on what the tribe taught me. This is a big thing to understand. You get this here? I'm not. Yeah, Because I'm basing my judgments of you on what the tribe taught me, that blondes don't have more fun. Okay, but you see what I mean? If I stay in this lower world, and this is a benefit of being unconscious, I go into unconscious gear, and I base my judgments on what I was taught, not the truth, not on who you are as a person, but just that all blondes do this, and all brunettes do that, and I'm supposed to avoid all blondes, and blah, 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 blah. And then I'm free to go, and I'm not responsible for that judgment because my tribe taught me, and therefore I'm off the hook, and my soul can't be held accountable.
So how do you become more conscious? How do you become more conscious? What has to happen for you to move up?
Could you repeat that?
How do you become more conscious? How come that mic isn't working? Okay.
How do you become more conscious? What has to happen to move you up a floor?
Well, one of the things that happens is your world falls apart.
So that was my original question.
Yeah.
For some people, their world falls apart and they still don't move up a floor.
Yeah, but it will keep falling apart.
Right, until they move up.
Yeah,
Right.
and no, it's not until they move up. It is that when their world falls apart and they begin to say, how do I get out of this? What do I do? And it's when they finally realize, is it me? Is it something I'm doing? Is it something I'm doing? And in the first floor, because of the first floor mentality, they will always look out the window and blame another person. Always. Everybody on the first floor blames someone else. And this is one of the big words on the first floor, and that's what I call the language I told you earlier, people who don't heal. One of their words is blame. If you have the word blame or that tendency, you're not getting out of anything at all. And so long as you hear the blaming pattern in someone, they don't have the power to get out.
So will they get there in their own time? How do you?
And inevitably, but who knows when?
But you can't pull them. Like
No.
you can't
No.
change
No.
that for
No.
them, can you?
No, because it's tied to so many things. And the fact is, some people like being angry, and they like being manipulative, and they like the effect their toxicity has on you. So one of the best things you can do is to don't talk them out of it. Let them choke on their poison. And you have to change your way. You have to change your way. You can't change them, but you can say, I'm sorry, I'm not putting up with your petulant nonsense anymore. I'm not putting up with it. Not putting up with it anymore. So, someone wants to have a temper tantrum,
Thank you. That's very helpful.
let them have it. But I'm not, You have to be willing to let a relationship end. And that's it. Anyone else? Yes, Lizette.
Hi.
Wait.
Gosh, I'm
No. Shh. I love the way people hold the microphone and go, and I have to say,
hello.
as if it's an
Can
art
you hear me?
object. Yeah, go ahead, darling.
I think it's been going on for a little while now that I'm left with this. What does God look like? I mean, who am I praying to? I pray. I pray all the time.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter before because I could visualize whatever I wanted, a bit of light or no man.
Little bit of
or-
light. Don't you love that? Little bit of light.
But then I remember last time I was here and we went through all the myths of what do we think God looks like? Is it the man up in the sky? And since then, I've noticed that I've accumulated a whole team of people I pray to, archangels, spirit guides, animal guides, but God somehow is not as clear because I need to visualize some I don't know if that's making sense to you.
Sure it is. Sure it is.
So I was going to ask you,
you know what? That is.
What does God look like to you? That was my question. I want to know what God looks like to you.
Oh dear. Well, you know, you're going to be so disappointed. I don't have a daddy. I just don't do the off-planet anything. I have to say I have a really intimate sense of God, ridiculously intimate. For some unknown reason, even to me, I actually feel like I'm always walking through God. I can't explain it. It's simply, I know it's as if, really for me, God is in all things and in every. And I know it sounds very impersonal, but I've crossed some kind of crazy Rubicon without effort. And that force is everywhere and in everything and in every tree and in everything. It's everywhere and in everything. And it's just a huge God place. So the idea that God has to look like okay, that's way in the back mirror. I left that one in the dirt. The idea, for me, the universe is so intimate that I know that everything we breathe is heard, is said, that you can't sneeze and that you don't understand it is too bad. It's too bad, because that is the way it is. And that every prayer is the way this universe is made intimate. And every prayer is heard. Every single thing we do is watched and observed and paid attention to. Not one act of kindness goes without being checked and noticed, and not one act of cruelty. But then someone can say, well, how can this happen? I don't know. Ask the human being who did it. Ask the human being who did it. Don't ask God. Ask the human being. Because there's endless teachings that say stop being, if we followed the spiritual teachings and were kinder and forgiving, we wouldn't produce human beings like we do. We're the ones that constantly screw it up. And if you think there's a God that's going to come down here and say, that's it, I'm just going to clean up your mess. That's not the way it is. I go to the airport and I see people who are so small-minded, petty, that they can't wait to get in line to get on a filthy airplane. And this is how we evolved. Oh, I got to be first. On a filthy airplane that's not going to get off the ground with everybody in it. And this is how we evolved people. And I'm like, oh man, I love watching this. So.
Thank you. Actually, thank you. I can let go now. Because I do.
God's in every coincidence and in every prayer.
I do feel that.
Yeah.
But it was very hard for me to let go of the vision of something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. What I don't do is I never say, oh, there's God in the sunshine. And there's I'm not a poet. I'm a very practical girl. And I'll always, when I see people in the street that need help, I say a prayer immediately. And I absolutely know they're going to get help. I don't pass homeless people without giving something. I always think you could be an angel in disguise, and I am not going to get my rear end kicked for not being charitable. It ain't going to happen. I absolutely believe angels are on the earth walking amongst us, and they're always in rags. And that's just the way it is.
Do you believe they're conscious of being angels?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. They're on assignment. But I'll tell you what, you can't stand on a stage and conjure up Michael for entertainment. Absolutely not. What a bunch of junk that was. But go ahead.
And hasn't that come home to roost?
Well, because, and I always say it was hypocrisy.
My question to you is, when will your book be published?
Why is this not working? Okay. Okay.
Is that closer to my mouth, maybe?
Okay, right.
When will your book be published?
I'll be turning in the manuscript later this year, probably in the summer, and then it'll be out later, hopefully at Christmas.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm very happy to be here. I noticed when I joined the Facebook group and looking around that it's only women here. I'm assuming.
Oh
I'm assuming that you didn't just advertise this workshop to females. So
no.
yeah. And I I've been personally involved in a Me Too situation. So I've been examining what's happened from a political standpoint, and had just actually recently read a book by Germaine Greer called On Rape.
Oh.
And she ends the book with her thesis is that two-thirds of sex is actually non-consensual, even in relationships.
Oh my God.
And she...
That's pretty bold.
I know, it is. It's a very tiny book with very little research, and she is an academic, but she ends the book by saying that we're never going to solve this issue until men stop hating women. Now, the reason I bring this up is I noticed how it just seems to me women seem to be a lot more interested in spirituality and God in the new movement that is on. And I've been to a lot of Deepak Chopra workshops, and yeah, there are men there, but there's generally more women than men at most of those
Always.
as well. And you know, but going on to what Germaine Greer has said, it started me thinking and wondering if really what's happening now is really a women's thing. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out because
let me help you out.
okay.
One of the major myths about God and about spirituality is that going anywhere near your spiritual nature, anywhere near it, what it does do is the journey to God is a journey to truth, and it makes you more aware of the other. Now, our economic model is dependent upon your capacity to not be aware of the other. And you count on your man being able to make a tough economic decision. The last thing you want your man to be is someone who can't bring home the bacon. You don't
I wish
want,
that was the case.
what? But you don't want your man at a place like this. Right. That's why there aren't men here. Because that's the last place a woman wants her husband, is at a place that sensitizes him to not be a warrior. And that's the truth.
Okay. It's a very interesting way to look at it.
It's also the truth. And as soon as women admit and own that they're not turned on by badass warriors, abuse will balance it out too. Okay? This isn't just about men hating women. It's about women wanting men who are badass warriors and liking it. So that's not a fair assessment at all.
I didn't say I believed it. I just.
Yeah. Okay. Whew! What a no tendon. I like this one better. So, thank you for being here. Thank all of you in joining us out there. And I think we're going to have a good time. So, when you go to sleep tonight, I love what Teresa does, okay? By the way, that's Avila for short. My girl. Okay. So, I want you to close your eyes when you go to sleep. I want you to picture the stars. And I want you to imagine the angels coming for you. And you say, take me to the realm with you and heal me. Take me up among the stars. Repair my soul. Repair my heart. Fill me with grace. And return me to my body in the morning.